Greetings and peace, everyone. This is Bassem Shaban, Director of the Peace Institute, and we are with you once again with another episode of our show, Race in America, discussing with our distinguished guests, Rabbi David Kay and Imam Hatem, representing both the Jewish community as well as the Muslim community in a very important discussion on race in America, but more so how it relates to many of the social issues that we as Americans are facing on a regular basis. So today we're going to touch base on another important topic that's once again, unfortunately been in the news with recent incidents of the Buffalo supermarket shooting, the elementary school shooting in Texas, and many of the constant incidents you're hearing about of mass shooting across the country. So this is an epidemic, as many experts have showcased it. It's always been in the discussion from Washington, D.C., between the president, Congress, and the Senate from a political perspective. But as always with this show, we want to present the faith-based perspective about gun violence today. And where do we go from here as a society to really not only reduce it, but also find a way to solve the problem itself. And that's why we want to always hear from our distinguished guests of the Rabbi and Imam from their perspective. So Rabbi, if you want to kick us off from your perspective about how you feel about what's been happening, and then what your points are, and then of course we'll follow up with other questions. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me be here. It's a very, very important topic in this very important broad subject. I'm actually calling in today from Deerfield, Illinois, which is right next door to Highland Park, where the 4th of July parade shooting was just a few days ago. And I can't help thinking of a couple of things. First of all, that what things are happening in our society and in our communities that lead people to do things like this, especially at I mean, not that it's ever a good time for something like that to happen, but especially at the 4th of July when families are together and they're celebrating the very freedom that allows someone to have possession of a weapon that they then use for terrorism, essentially. The second thing that comes to mind, of course, is the circumstances. Highland Park, Illinois, is a very affluent community. I grew up in the Chicago area. I've known about Highland Park for all of my life, and the person who committed the crime was someone known in the community. So often our attention is drawn to these horrible mass shootings, which are occasionally racially motivated, occasionally motivated by hatred of another religion or another culture. Yet, sadly, tragically, that's only the tip of the iceberg of gun violence in the United States. If you added up all of the victims of mass shootings, and there have been so many, a record number, unfortunately, it's less than 5% of the people who die by gun violence in this country every year. So if we're paying this much attention to these horrible incidents, we should be paying dozens of times more attention to what happens elsewhere as well.
Very good, thank you. Imam Hatem?
Yes, so usually, thank you for having me as well. Usually it's easy for me to just say ditto behind the rabbi. It's very easy for me to say ditto. That's what I have to say exactly also. But my little 2 cents is that according to a huge survey, pretty huge survey, the majority of people that say we do need something to happen with this gun violence issue. That laws need to be put in place, and stabilized laws need to be put in place by people who really actually mean well. They really want to, lawmakers that really want to get something done, let the rubber meet the road, and get some traction in regards to gun control. But however, there's a big pushback on the relationship with gun violence and gun control. So the population of the number of guns that exist in the United States of America is maybe double, maybe 3 times the population, unfortunately. So we have a situation where it's out of hand, and as so rightly described as an epidemic. So I would just say that from where I sit as a citizen and as a community leader, as an imam responsible for Muslim community members and leadership and that kind of thing, as a citizen, I believe it has become too politicized, as most of you who readily can identify with, playing ping pong, volleying with this whole idea about gun violence and what causes it, what we can do to push back on it, and so to get the numbers down. It's unfortunate that it's almost like it's trying to stop a herd after it has stampeded. So until lawmakers put the safety of our citizens above the safety of their positions as a career, by any means necessary, no sustainable bipartisan solutions will manifest. And we will witness, as a result, the continuing delay of stable gun laws in this country, because gun laws, not directly, but indirectly, may have something to do with putting some kind of Band-Aid on gun violence. That's what I have to say about that.
All right, thank you. So Rabbi and Imam, tell us, what would your faith perspective present about the source of this violence? Is it really based on laws or the lack of, or is there something deeper in the psyche of the human being? Obviously some human beings, not all of us, that is really motivating them to go all the way to the level of taking another person's life?
Yeah, I'll go first on this one because the rabbi has been going first on so many of those.
That's fine, Imam, go ahead.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So I just wanted to just say that on an average, almost 100 people die every day in the United States from gun violence, and it's really sad. So I think that it is a big problem, again, from where I sit. It's a big problem with just the whole idea of being human, essentially, whole idea of being human, what kind of households people are raised up in, what parents say at the dinner table, what people hear at school, and the rigmarole of, just disrespecting common humanity, So I think that the question becomes for us, is gun violence a Muslim issue? The quick answer is yes, it is a Muslim issue, because any kind of violence is against the principle, which is the first principle of our religion, and that is peace. Islam, as many people already know, but I'm re-emphasizing that our religion essentially means peace, coming from the source of peace. We say is Allah is the source of peace. And so anyone who follows this lifestyle must be looking at first instant, how will I bring peace to this situation? So it's really sad when people, when they hear the word Muslim and they still do it, they think about terror. They shouldn't do that. When they hear the word Muslim, they should be thinking about peaceful man or peaceful woman, peaceful boy, peaceful girl. But unfortunately, that's not the way it's happening. So I think that it is a problem of mental health in this country, that would provoke an individual to go and, grab something like a AR-15 or something like that to do harm to, in our religion, our prophet, peace be upon him, he said that the blood of a Muslim is more precious than the holy house, the Kaaba itself. Just one morsel, just a drip of blood is precious. We should be trying to save it. We should be trying to savor it. We should be trying to, keep our family, our community, etc., and beyond toward the broader community in a state of peace. So I'll give you a direct statement because our position on violence itself is it is both the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet categorically and unequivocally reject the act of transgression. So actually, the violence piece for us is a no-brainer. And God says, but if you are transgressed upon, only as a response should we as Muslims use any kind of force like that. So God says in the Quran, and fight in the way of God against those who fight you. Don't start the fight, but if something happens, someone transgress upon you, your family, the safety of your family and things of this nature. Yes, God says, and fight in the way of God against those who fight you, but do not transgress beyond bounds. Truly, God loves not the transgressors. And that's from our holy book. So I'll stop there.
Rabbi?
Thank you. Yes, the primary sources in Judaism make it very clear, just to echo what the Imam just said, that nonviolence doesn't mean not defending yourself. And we certainly have teachings that say, if you are faced with a life or death situation, then by all means defend yourself. What we're talking about most of the time with gun violence in the US is not a matter of self-defense. It's and the most common situation where there's death by firearm is suicide. Some half or more, depending on the data that you look at, of deaths by gun violence are self-inflicted wounds, and that is the sort of mental health issue that the Imam is speaking of as well. That we have people who are in such despair and feel they have no other recourse than to take their own lives. We have plenty of data to show that not only access to mental health care would be instrumental in reducing suicides, but that reducing free access to firearms. There's this myth that if someone truly wants to take their own life, that if they don't have a gun, they'll find another way. The data just don't support that. Some will, but many will not. And also, you can't change your mind. If you take pills and you decide, this isn't what I want to do, and you call 911, your chance of survival is much greater than if you've shot yourself. On top of all of that, we have the idea of really of the sanctity of human life, and this is paramount in every faith tradition. In Judaism, it manifests itself. Judaism sometimes gets a bad rap for being too legalistic. But whether that's true or not, and I would argue it's not, it's a different conversation, but whether that's true or not, virtually all of those rules and regulations can be set aside, in fact, must be set aside for the protection and preservation of a life. So, whatever it is that people might want to use as a justification for having multiple firearms or using firearms, there is no solid justification, no justification at all certainly for the aggressive use of firearms or any kind of deadly force in this tradition. Well, one other thing that really I feel, since we're talking about race in America, it has to be included is the connection of certainly not all of the mass shooters, but certainly some of the most recent ones. The church shooting for sure, and the Highland Park shooting for sure. Now we know are associated with white supremacy. There are not even racist undertones. There's blatant racism involved in it, and if we don't address that issue, we're also not going to be able to see any sort of significant and lasting reduction in the sort of violence we've been witnessing.
Yeah.
Very good. And I think to piggyback on that, Rabbi, there's also the significance of, as the Imam mentioned, an average of 100 deaths a day in America of gun violence. But we only hear of the ones that are highlighted maybe in certain communities versus possibly minority communities, which are constantly affected with crime and gun violence on a regular basis. So that speaks somewhat to the media attention and how they somewhat cherry pick what news they put on gun violence, which is another dynamic in itself. So in our last discussion, as we run out of time, what do you guys think are the solutions moving forward? Is it really just dependent on the policymakers and the lawgivers of the land, or do we have a part to play as everyday citizens? What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I will simply kind of refer back to what I said earlier, and then maybe something. But from where I sit as a citizen, I believe that it has become politicized, and basically too politicized. So one of the biggest solutions would most likely be for lawmakers to put things, in place where the citizens could decide on, which direction, gun laws will go. And that's just one aspect, because it has not been proven that putting more laws on gun control will solve the problem of gun violence in the United States of America. The cat is already out of the bag, as they say. Things have already happened, and there are so many guns already on the street, legal and illegal. Those that are, have guns that have, distribution in private parties and parks and programs. Guns are everywhere. So I think that it should be maybe a 2 or 3 pronged effort to get lawmakers in place, or people to represent us from that political standpoint, that have that common denominator of being responsible and being really having a concern for human beings, in general, not just my party, my group, my section, like that. And there's very few people that actually take that position, but we have to do what we can to put people in positions that really have this bipartisan view of saving lives and getting the country back on the right track. This is a beautiful country that we live in. It's a wonderful place to live. That's the reason why so many people travel here to live here. But, I think that we should do more as citizens to either speak out in regards to these imbalanced kinds of perceptions and imbalanced kinds of responses, as you mentioned, Bassem, earlier, of the media and things like that. So it's an uphill climb, and so until lawmakers put in place the safety of our citizens above the safety of their positions as a career, no substantial solutions will manifest, and we will witness, as a result, the continuing delay of stable gun laws, and as a result, unstable situations having to do with the use of guns.
Thank you, Imam. Rabbi?
there is, I agree fully, and you know, there's there's the additional factor of fear. You know, fear mongering is a all too popular way to try and advance a political agenda.
Yeah.
You know, and I hear people who are resistant to laws reforming, you know, gun regulation, or even, you know, any kind of regulation, registration, red flag laws, whatever, saying, you know, you're trying to take guns away. And no person of goodwill is trying to take guns away from law-abiding, sensible, rational, stable individuals. That's just not, it's just not true. But it does play on a fear. And, you know, I think that's where the faith communities and faith traditions have an opportunity, is to help people understand that making decisions out of fear is consistently a poor strategy, and being manipulated because of your fears. The person who is doing that is not working in your best interest. And that's what we want political leaders to do, to represent us and to represent our best interests to the fullest degree that they can. You know, and I think that's borne out in some of the most recent statistics that I've seen. You know, over 70% of all gun-owning households, including those who are where they're households with people who are members of the National Rifle Association, and for just gun-owning households, the percentage is actually significantly higher. But anyway, a vast majority of Americans are in favor of regulation of access to guns. Yeah. And the fact that, you know, our lawmakers have not responded in kind gives us a very clear picture, I think, of the disconnect between what the community really wants, to feel safe and to not feel fearful, and what's being politicized, as the Imam said, for purposes other than the best interests of the population.
All right, great discussion. Once again, thank you for your words of wisdom and guidance and reflection. We pray and hope that you know, great minds will find these solutions, and that we can also work together and collaborate, from government to faith communities as well as regular citizens, so we can tackle this from a holistic perspective, so we can all feel the benefits of stability and security for our kids and our communities every day. So thank you again for your time, and look forward to seeing you in the near future.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.